When you think about the top 5 sources of stress in life, our fellow member Corinne Crowley found herself checking at least 3 of those boxes all at once, just a couple of years ago, and in some ways still does. And yet, as you will see, she does it with openness and transparency, with faith, and the grace of God and the people around her, some of whom she specifically names. Last week we were blessed by the walk of Bruce Hartung, who is an ordained psychologist, who had a very insightful spiritual story. Like Bruce and like her husband, Kevin, Corine also happens to be a psychologist, but with a very different story, in which she learned that she was pregnant. She experienced the sudden and unexpected death of her mother, and she received a cancer diagnosis, all in a short period of time, which, in addition to her grief and her concerns for her own health, resulted in a high-risk pregnancy and the need to make some very complicated decisions for the health of her unborn child. And tonight you will hear about how that went and how this caregiver needed to be cared for and was, and how it's going now as Jesus walks with her through and out of the valleys of illness and of loss. I invite you to listen for the things that were important to her and that made a difference for her and can make a difference for all of us as Jesus walks with Corinne Crowley. So you grew up in the church, and in fact, you and I have some people and some places in common. So tell us how this all got started.
I grew up in Calvert County, Maryland, about 45-50 minutes south of here toward the Bay. And I went to First Lutheran, and that is where Pastor John Kassouf was my pastor all the way through confirmation. So I know his family really well, of his sons, and I think you guys are
Yes,
pretty close.
We go way back.
Yeah. And then I had a new pastor later in high school. Went to University of Miami for college and found another Lutheran church down there, if you can imagine. And then I came back for graduate school. I went to Catholic University, and that's actually how I ended up here, because I was living more on the DC side, and First Lutheran recommended St. Andrews.
Hey, good.
They're like, oh, you're near St. Andrews. So I came up here, and I loved the sermons, I love the music, and that hooked me. So
yeah, that's great. Well, and you've been part of that, and I want to talk about that too. So what were you studying at Catholic U?
Clinical psychology. So that is also where I met my husband, Kevin. So we're both psychologists, which we get a lot of comments about. Right.
You analyze each other over dinner.
Yeah.
How does that work?
And our poor children. That's
yes,
right.
your poor children.
Yeah.
Gotta talk to Vanessa, the middle child, about that role. So,
Yes.
so you came out of school and you got into practice, or were you working and what were you doing?
Yes, I'm in a group practice out of Potomac Expressive Therapy Center, and so that's a private practice, and do therapy with kids and adolescents and families, and assessments, evaluations for ADHD, learning disorders, things like that. So, and then I supervise students now, so that's always a fun role that I used to be those students.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now I supervise, so it's fun.
That's really interesting. So you're a counselor, which means you're in this caring profession, and you're out there and you're helping people get through their stuff. I know that, in my role as a pastor, I like to say that, psychology comes from the Greek word psyche, which is soul, and so psychology is the study of the soul, and it in that sense, it helps us to look inward to get our answers, and theology is the study of God. And so we also get answers from outside of ourselves. And I know that as a Christian, that's part of your MO as well. But here you are, and you're rolling along you and Kevin get married, you're in counseling, you find St. Andrew, you love the music, and life is good, and you've got a daughter, and then kind of the caregiver sees the walls kind of crashing in on her, and give us the sequence of all of that, because it was in some ways at least a double or even a triple whammy for you. So tell us that story.
So I had my two daughters, Ashley and Vanessa, and in 2020 was difficult for everybody. The pandemic kind of changed the world, and so that was part of the context. And then 2021 was probably my hardest year of my life. So I lost my mom unexpectedly in September of 2021. And I then received a diagnosis of breast cancer in October, where it was starting. You kind of go through a lot of tests. I got my official diagnosis November 5th, but we knew before that that the diagnosis was coming. And I was also pregnant at the time. So third baby, and knew she was a girl, so I had 3 girls. But it was very challenging. I was about 7 weeks pregnant when I lost my mom, which again was sudden, completely unexpected, and my mom and I were very close. So that was devastating, and still is. Yes. And then the breast cancer was, another hit that did not expect, but it threw me in a different direction. That was more of the fear and anxiety and going into survival mode for a long time. Right. So that's, we're still kind of in, but I think we're starting to come out of that.
Yeah, so you're in it. Even now, it's not really behind you. And from your professional perspective and just your humanity, how do those things relate to each other? Did it feel like one kind of grief was sabotaging another, or was it more of a kitchen sink kind of dynamic?
Oh, absolutely. I think the grief for my mom I wasn't able to process at the time, because once I got the diagnosis, it was constant. It was constant appointments, scans. Unfortunately, I have an aggressive type, and I had to go into chemo right away. I had to, and unfortunately, I was so blessed. I was happy to be pregnant, but it did cause complications in my treatment, and I wasn't able to get the particular kind of drug they wanted me to have because it would cause birth defects. So I had to make some really hard decisions that the doctors were not always supportive of, and I had to wait for the drug that the oncologist really wanted me to take until after I had the baby. So we tried some other things first. We tried the chemo first. It didn't work very well. So then I decided to have the surgery first while I was still pregnant. And that was challenging as well. The anesthesia, there was a lot of variables. I consulted with a lot of doctors. It ended up fine. Then I had Bianca about a month after that surgery. So another surgery. And it really worked out well. That everybody was so amazed how healthy she was, that she really was full term. We waited all the way to 38 weeks. And she's now, you can see her in the back of the church every Sunday at the 11 o'clock, just bouncing and happy, and she's wonderful, and she's a blessing. That's also why we named her Bianca. She was like the bright white light in the really darkness.
Oh, wow, that is great.
So I think that became the focus for a while. So that was part of why I didn't grieve my mom as much, because it was just constant appointments. And then having the baby, and then you have a newborn. And then I had to go into the hard chemo that I couldn't do before. So I had that, and then I had radiation, which was kind of a special radiation that I did in Baltimore, where I went like 37 times in a row, because you have to go every day for radiation. So it just changed our lives. I cut back on work. I stopped the therapy clients. I think, therapy, I want to give it my best. And it's really about empathizing with others, and you have to have those emotional resources available to them. I didn't have very many emotional resources available. So I paused that. I still did some supervision, still did some testing, but I did significantly reduce working. And of course, Kevin was absolutely amazing. I could not have made it through this last year and a half without him.
Well, I gotta say, you got a good guy there.
Amazing.
No question about that.
Yep.
And your daughters, all three, really have personality all over the place. I mean,
Yes, they
they
do.
should all be named Bianca because they all shine, very brightly here at church. But meanwhile, I mean, you got all of these experiences and feelings, going in 10 different directions. All at the same time. And I know that, we had talked about that and the scheduling of the surgery. And, of course, we were, praying like crazy through that whole period of time. And, where is all of that now for you? Because, it's, I hear this about, people in ministry as well. It's one thing to help somebody else go through something. Mm-hmm. It's another thing when you yourself are also going through that same thing or something else. And can you talk a little bit about how's that going now? Is it getting kind of separated out or what?
Yes. I started my own therapy because, as a healer, you also have to recognize when you need help as well. And so I think that is very helpful. And so I'm starting to feel more relief. Can take more breaths now. Mm-hmm. Since I finished a lot of the really intensive treatments. I'm close to the end of my active treatments now. I'll be finished in May. So it feels like things are slowing down. And then, so it was harder in winter going to November and December after the year anniversary of my mom, where it kind of came crashing in a bit. That was a hard time. And it came with, when things lighten up, then I had more resources to deal with that too. So I think processing that, letting myself have that, the series of emotion, the waves that keep coming, to not try to stop everything so that I can function for the next day. I'm still in that place, but it is feeling more manageable now. Yeah, I think not having as intense demands on the time of going to appointments and the treatments that were very demanding and tiring, and you just aren't able to do as much. And I like to be productive, and I like to do a lot. So that was challenging for me.
I am sure you do. And I mean, it. I just keep thinking. The word complicated just keeps coming into my mind when I think of all of this, because you've got the grief journey. You're in a profession that encourages people to express their feelings and have catharsis and get it all out, and now you're wrestling with your own need to kind of push down on one thing, even though it kind of pops up somewhere else, because you're concerned about your own health, you're concerned about your baby's health, and you're grieving all at the same time. So where was the faith journey in all of that? I mean, how did that go? And this could not have been easy by any stretch of the imagination. The faith walk has to be complicated because the circumstances are just so complicated. So
Yeah, and it was mixed. It was not a smooth road. Lots of bumps. Where again, going through the grief of the multiple processes, the grief of my mom, the grief of my health. I had this identity as a healthy, fit person, always into exercise. Like I was grieving that loss of like, I'm a cancer patient now. That is a very different experience. Again, not being able to do everything that I could do before. That is a different experience. All the changes my body was going through. I'm starting to have my hair grow back, so that was exciting. But there was just so many things on a day-to-day basis. It changes for you. Your whole mind is taken up sometimes by the process, by fear, by intrusive thoughts. You just can't help but think of the worst could be happening. Every little ache and pain could be the worst thing you can imagine. And so I think some of the things that I did throughout the year, I did ask for help. And so I asked, from the church community and my family. I have family, again, pretty close in Calvert County, and so they would help. And I think all my family are Christian, and I just knew that, everybody's praying for me. Everybody's praying for me. Even if I couldn't get my heart into the right place that day, I know somebody else was. So I think that was very comforting. And I, was still coming to church, so hearing the word, always helps. And going through worship, I connect spiritually a lot with music. So having my playlist, having the things that I know God touches me through this, and so I have to lean into that. I have to listen to those songs. I, had a lot of devotions that, as you kind of go through these processes, you're signed up with a lot of organizations and groups, and I had some care packages and things given to me, Phil's friends, things like that some are Christian-based, and they would give you devotions. And so I had some that were 50 days of devotions written by cancer patients, somebody who had been through the process, and they got testimonials from all these other cancer patients. And so it was, to me, very encouraging. And at the beginning of the book, they say they're all going to be positive stories, because the last thing you want is the negative stories being told to you while you're going through it. So I think those things really helped me. Even if it was small, the devotion's 5-10 minutes, but I was like, I have to do something, stay connected. I want to not lose myself completely in the process. I did, you lose some of yourself, whether it's body parts or whatever it is. You lose some. Yeah. But you try to figure it out in a new way. There's a new normal now. So.
Well, one of the things I'm thankful for, and I know it works differently for everybody because we're all unique. But when things are good and we're not, suffering through things like that you've had to deal with, there's power in hearing about Jesus who comforts us in our sorrows, and we come to him in prayer, and all of those great lessons that are significant to our faith. And sometimes I feel like, we're in rehearsal when times are good. Because, when things, do come crashing in on us like they, have had for you, that's when, it's really tested and it's challenged. And, I'm the husband of a 2-time cancer survivor, and I honestly don't remember how long it took before I could go through a single day without thinking about that. And I don't imagine that you're quite
I'm
there,
not there yet.
We pray for that day to come, and again, it's that you're going through it, and you're trying to help the kids, you're trying to help Kevin, he's trying to help you, and do some work and all of that. But you said that one of your connections or sources of strength, was in music, and I'm pretty sure I'm right that Jesus walks with you through the gift of music, because you were singing before all this happened. Were you singing at your church growing up? Yes.
Oh yes.
Yes.
I was, in multiple choirs, and as much as I could at church. And all through college, and I was in a gospel choir. And I did a youth encounter team where it was a music ministry for a year, where you travel and we went to Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia, and it was, that we were an acoustic band, and we put on these shows for kids everywhere, and it was, it's always been a big part. I was like, I knew I was still going to rely on music. Even though I did stop singing here for a while. It's been difficult to get through services most of the year without just bawling. And now I'm able to sing. I'm so glad I'm starting to sing again in the choir. There were times though for months where, I was having throat issues and radiation. I didn't realize, like, I was in pain a lot. Like, I couldn't sing. So that was something I never thought about, something I never thought would happen to me.
Right.
As in, of course, the whole situation, but how that could still be taken away in some piece, but, finding the connection in another place.
Yeah. Well, we sing songs like, I will praise you in the storm, and, you would come to mind, in that. And you don't know this, but behind your back, we were talking about you in our worship planning sessions, like, is she ready to sing again? Is she ready to come back again? So we were looking for that day. And, to see you, back there singing again with the choir, that's a great sign. It's a gift.
It is.
It's really a blessing as well. And, the other thing is, you get to be in a church where you can, cry your eyes out at the back of the church on Sunday morning if you want to. And
people are giving me tissues.
If you need
thank
to,
you.
yes,
Yes.
Absolutely. And you're surrounded, I think of this too, people who are singing for you when you can't sing until you can get back and do that. So, that's just part of the magic of the church. And, I give thanks, for that as well. So are you back at work at all now? Or?
Yeah, I'm doing still the testing cases and supervision. I haven't started the therapy yet, probably not until after my active treatments end in May. But I am working more.
Yeah.
So there's some relief there, I think that's helpful to have that piece of my life as well. That's part of the identity,
And Kevin's not here, so we get to talk about him behind his back.
Please.
So, he had his own journey. I mean,
Yes.
I can identify a little bit with the husband journey in here too. And
more than a little bit,
Yeah. So you're concerned about him while he's concerned about you at the same time.
Yeah, of course, because it is constant stress. And I mean, my mom was very helpful with some of the childcare pieces. So I think, of all of the things that could have happened, like, oh, my mom would have helped with all of these things. So you would have loved to have been here to be my support during this. And it kind of turned out Kevin was all of it. I mean, he was pivotal. I just don't know how we would have done it. And so I think he, felt the stress and the strain, had so much grace in it for me. And, I hope that I showed for him. But I think it's still challenging for him. But I think he's, we're starting to be on the other side and seeing some relief. But, I mean, he's been amazing. I can't say enough good things about him and how much the spouses go through on these any serious illness journey. The spouses have to take up a lot. I mean, 3 kids, a newborn. He took a lot of the nights at the beginning because that's when I started my hard chemo after right after I had the baby. Yeah. So he did it. He did it all.
It's that whole for better for worse thing.
Sickness and
that got said somewhere in the process.
And he had to act it out.
And he did.
Showed up.
He did.
Well,
you're a great family, and we're really just so thankful for the the healing that's been given, the progress that's been made, in both body and soul, and for the ways that Jesus walked with you through your worship, through your word, through the fellowship we share, and through the music as well. I like that phrase. I had my playlist. That is pretty cool, and we give thanks, and we also pray for more as the days go on. And I also want to say that, if there's a sense that, even though it was tough, I mean, and it is tough, walking by faith doesn't mean a cakewalk, but on the other hand, you think about, what would this be like if it happened apart from any kind of faith or any kind of hope that I have. And so thankful that Jesus walked through you through this, and that he's still walking with you through this. But I also want to say thanks because, Jesus walking through you, with you through this time in your life is kind of a way that he also walks through things with the rest of us, because we see what happens when a woman of faith plows through, the triple whammies. And, some of these things are still works in progress, I know. But he's also walking with us by walking with you. And that's pretty cool. And we give thanks for that as well. So loosen up the vocal cords, and we'll give you a listen. You have a beautiful voice, and I know you can really bring it for the glory of God.
Thank you.
So,
I'm very thankful to have the church, to have you, and if I can take a second to also really thank Lindsay and Dave Heineman, because talk about wonderful, God-fearing people. I'm not sure my children would have eaten as well this entire year without Lindsay Heineman.
Right.
She made meals for us every week for a year. Like, what kind of people do that?
Yeah,
I didn't know those people existed.
They exist.
Till this past year. There they are.
Absolutely.
In our church.
I mean, they are just very gracious, and if anybody out there is going through some struggles and they need to try out some new recipes, they should definitely come to St. Andrew, because you will be well fed. So
I'm very thankful for the community here, and everybody's checking in. I got cards, all those things. It's wonderful. Yeah. They're all wonderful to
all good.
Get.
Well, we're still praying away, and we're still giving thanks and still asking for more.
Appreciate it. I'll take it.
Okay. Thanks. Blessings to you.
Thank you.
What kind of people do what people have done for Corine, Kevin, and the girls? The answer would be God's people. United in a family in which one suffers and all suffer, one rejoices and all rejoice. And so we give thanks for Corine, for her courage and her persistent faith, and for those Jesus has used and is using to walk with her and with her family. Also give thanks for the 4 others who have shared their walks with Jesus with us during these Wednesdays of Lent. For Mitch, who saw Jesus guiding his service here at church, as well as his work in the entertainment industry. For Lisa and her insight into God's presence at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. For Marin, who made an 8,000-mile move, and all that implies in response to God's call in her life. For Bruce, who brings together the psychological world and the theological world in ways that have helped the lives and ministries of many others, including me, and tonight, of course, for Corine. But you should also know that there are so many others that I could have easily invited to share their stories, which I know are just as important, just as powerful as the ones you've heard, and those would include many of yours. But what I really want to emphasize as we close out this series of messages for Lent this year is that for all of them and all of us, it really does ultimately go back to Jesus, who walks with us and ultimately goes to a cross for the kind of peace, the kind of freedom, the kind of community that you just can't get anywhere else. And so with that, it's now on to Palm Sunday as we trace the walk of Jesus from Bethany to Jerusalem, to the upper room, and to that cross, to bring us life and to send his Spirit so that we might keep walking with him, knowing that he walks with us always until the walk is over and we sit down together in the bright mansions of God. Thank you for being part of our walks with Jesus here at St. Andrew. Amen.